If there is one thing that we can say about this Bulls team is that they are incredibly unpredictable. They struggle and lose to teams like the Pistons and then follow it up the next day by beating a hot team like the Cavs in double overtime. And then they'll look lifeless and lethargic against the Bucks, and then they'll come back after being down 20 plus points in the third quarter to win the game like they did the other night against the Kings. The Bulls have shown incredible displays of resiliency and fighting back in games against some of the best teams in the NBA, but then of course there are those games where they look completely disengaged and nothing is going their way. They are arguably one of the most inconsistent teams in the NBA when it comes to their play and level of effort on the court, but one thing that has remained constant with this team throughout the season is how well they have shown up in clutch situations. Clutch games defined by the league as games within 5 points with 5 minutes to go in the game. The Bulls, who lead the league in clutch minutes, and by a wide margin at that, play some of their best basketball in those final minutes. So good in fact that it's starting to become a running joke that the Bulls don't really start the game until those final 5 minutes. And if only the Bulls could play like they do in the fourth quarter for the whole game, they actually would be a good team sitting near the top of the Eastern Conference. Just how good, you ask? Well, let's dive into some of these shocking numbers for how the Bulls play in clutch situations. So what's going on, everyone? You're listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Also, I don't do this often. If you're new around here and you like this type of content, it would mean a great deal to me if you subscribe to help the channel grow. About half of you watching are not subscribed, so I'd really appreciate your sub, and that way you don't miss a video in the future. Now, I made a similar video on this topic a few weeks back, but diving into it a bit more on this one, especially now that we have updated numbers and an even larger sample size. So like I mentioned, the Bulls lead the NBA in number of clutch minutes, and they're third in the league in the number of clutch games played so far this season at 35. And when it comes to the number of clutch minutes played, the Bulls are by far and away the leader, leading the league in 159 minutes, while the team in second, the Sacramento Kings, have played 129 minutes. The Bulls also lead the league in number of clutch wins at 20. That said, bear in mind, they play in a lot of clutch games, so that number is a little skewed, when in reality their win percentage in the clutch is at 57% with a record of 20-15, which is 9th in the NBA. But rather than focusing on the number of wins percentage, and just how often the Bulls find themselves in clutch situations, what's more telling, even despite the losses, is how well the Bulls perform in those minutes. Minutes when the game is at its peak in terms of the amount of pressure and the stakes are at the highest to close things out, and it's more shocking when you compare to how this team performs for the rest of the game relative to those final 5 minutes. So let's start with just some of the basic metrics comparing clutch performances versus non, and then we'll dive into some of the more advanced stats. But in the clutch, the Bulls are shooting 47.4% from the field, 39.6% from 3. While on the whole, the Bulls are actually shooting 46.4% from the field and 35.6% from 3. Now, I know that sounds inconsequential to some, but to illustrate just how big of a difference this is from the way the Bulls shoot the ball for the whole game compared to the final 5 minutes, the Bulls are 24th in the NBA in field goal percentage and 3-point percentage, but in the clutch, they're top 5 in the league in both categories, 3rd in the NBA in 3-point shooting in clutch games. The Bulls are also 3rd in the league in rebounding and 1st in assists in clutch moments, while the Bulls for the season are 14th in rebounding and 27th in assists, from being one of the worst passing teams in the NBA to 1st in the league in clutch games. They are 2nd in the league in steals in the clutch, while 9th on the season, and they force the most turnovers in clutch time than any other team, while they're in the middle of the pack in forcing turnovers across the whole game. But to me, the most telling statistic, the Bulls have a plus 22 net rating in the NBA in clutch moments, which is 3rd in the league in clutch situations, only behind the defending champion Denver Nuggets and the Boston Celtics. While the Bulls on the season for all quarters have a negative net rating of 1.6. good for 20th in the NBA. There isn't a team even close to that who has that kind of net rating discrepancy from their overall rating versus what it is in the clutch. That is staggering. The Bulls, who are 16th in the league on defense and 2nd on the defensive end in clutch minutes, a defensive rating of 97, well above league average compared to their defensive rating of 115 for the rest of the game. Like, what is going on with this team when it comes to them turning it up a notch in those final minutes of the game? Now, granted, teams across the board in general are going to take things up a notch in a close game situation than they otherwise would for the rest of the game, or a game where it's a blowout. So naturally, you're going to see better net ratings, better defense, more focused offense in close games. But even then, the Bulls are an exception, going from being a mid to below average team for the first 3.5 quarters of the game to an elite team in the final 5 minutes. And it gets even better when the game gets closer and closer to the buzzer. I got these numbers from Will Gottlieb of CHGO. So I mentioned the Bulls in the final 5 minutes have a plus 22 net rating. In the final 3 minutes, though, of the game, they are a plus 24.4. And in the final minute of the game, their net rating is a ridiculous plus 32.2. They are a positive 32 points per 100 possessions in the final minute of the game. Also, do you know who leads the league in overall plus minus in the clutch and leads that category by a full 12 points at a plus 86 on the season thus far? Coby White, leaps and bounds ahead of everyone in the league in clutch minutes and plus minus. I mean, it's honestly just mind-boggling to me to see a team be exceptionally better in the clutch compared to the rest of the game. Really, it kind of makes you all the more frustrated at this team when you see that they have the ability to be elite in their overall performance if they could just give consistent effort for the whole 48 minutes. Something we've been talking about all season, how all we want to see from this team is for them to play hard with effort and purpose for the whole game. It's maddening as a fan to see them take some quarters off, take their foot off the gas, and then find themselves in big deficits that they have to dig their way out of. But what I will say, though, is this. Seeing these types of numbers, and also just the eye test watching this team when it comes to closing out games, especially when you compare it to how they were showing up last season in clutch moments, the level of play, the level of focus, attention to detail, and seeing these high net ratings in the final minutes of the game, it does give me a lot of confidence when going into the play-in, because we know the competitiveness level of the play-in and the virtue of it being an elimination game, a high-stakes game or games, there are likely going to be close matchups that go down to the wire. And based on what we know of this team, based on how they've shown up as a group this season in clutch moments, I would put my money on the Bulls, regardless of who they're going up against. The veteran leadership of DeMar, the elite defense of Alex Caruso, the lethal shooting of Coby White, even I would assume for that matter, the poise, the confidence, the resiliency. Yeah, I'm not going to count this team out when the game comes down to those final possessions. Not sure I can say I have a lot of confidence in this team in other aspects of the game, but when it comes to clutch minutes, I feel a little more at ease with this crew. Let me know what you guys think though, and whether you were just as surprised as I was with some of these numbers the Bulls have put up at the end of games this season. The Bulls are taking on the Jazz later tonight. Hopefully this game doesn't go down to the wire since the Jazz have really been struggling recently, but you never know. You never can be too sure what to expect from this team going into any game, regardless of who they're going up against. As always though guys, be sure to subscribe and I will see you in the next one.